All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. This is our second segment with Karin Hurt, and she's the book author of Overcoming an Imperfect Boss. So she's got some practical advice and tips on how to get us to the next level of our relationship with our boss. So, Karin, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Great. We'll do a bit of introductions here. We'll start on the left with Barry Smith.
Hey, Barry Smith with Building What Matters coming to you from Gresham, Oregon.
Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Tal.
We'll go to Liz Stinselli next.
Hi, Liz Stinselli with Stinselli Advisors, joining you from Salt Lake City, Utah. Glad to be here tonight.
Glad to have you. Are you getting any type of sunshine, warm weather?
It's about 80 here today, so
All right.
nice.
All right. I guess our next hangout will be outside then. All right. Karin, we finished up with, I know, some really interesting thoughts about disengaging boss or someone who we see struggling and we want them to be supportive. So I thought it was an interesting discussion. In your book, you offer some tips on how we can, if there's a situation that we needed to restore trust or have that trust relationship, what are some tips that you can offer to us? Because a lot of times I think there's a point in time where someone is hearing something from another person or they get a third information from somebody. How do we restore trust when the trust is not all there between ourselves and the boss?
Yeah, so trying to really reestablish the relationship and getting your boss to trust you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think that's so important. And there can be a variety of reasons that could break down. And sometimes it even breaks down before you even start a relationship, right? You come and your boss, for one reason or another, is not coming with an attitude of trust. So
Right.
I would say the first thing is to really have a good conversation with them and not say, hey, why don't you trust me? But I would start right with the questions of how can I best support you? How do you think I'm impacting the team? How do you think I'm playing into our team's mission? What else can I do? What do your peers say about me? And ask a variety of questions just to really get the conversation going, because I think it's very important to understand what's underneath that lack of trust. And then I would say do everything you can. First of all, be a rock star at your job, right?
Right. Right.
You do what you say you will do every time, and you are known as the go-to guy. It's very hard to lose trust when that's happening. So it's really about being consistent. I would also say if your boss is either at a senior level and is very busy and distracted, or if for some reason has a large team, I think it's very helpful to over communicate, but do it very easily so they can navigate to it. So, if you're remote, particularly communicate frequently in bulleted summaries and enable your boss to have that access to that data whenever he or she needs it, so that they feel like, oh, they've got it. Because if with a lack of information, that becomes a vacuum that creates wonder.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the other is if you've got bad news, make sure you're the very first person to share it. And with my team, I always call that the no blindside rule. And the last thing you want is your boss to hear something bad from his boss or his peers, right? Something bad that's going on in his own organization. And so we just invoked the no blindside rule, and people would always call me like, okay, no blindside rule, I'm just giving you this update. I don't want you to do anything about it. I don't need your help. I've got it under control, but this is what's happening. And that created a bit of an amnesty for me to be like, okay, well, I can't really be mad. They're just informing me. And right. I think that creates a very healthy environment when you handle it that way.
So it sounds like you touched on not only communicating, but making sure that our performance is up to par, because results speak louder, and they can see that we're willing to make the efforts to perform, and that creates trust between people, because we're now it's a long-term view. It's a team. You're sacrificing your ego for the team. You're willing to do what it takes to prove that.
Nothing is going to create better trust than making sure that you're doing the right thing in the right way all the time, right?
Right.
I mean, if you have a reputation of that will inherently create trust.
Right, right. That's excellent.
Hey, Karen, you mentioned a couple times team and/or teamwork, and can you just maybe, real briefly just touch on the idea of culture, as related to this boss-employee relationship, maybe either good or bad, but I know, I feel anyway, that I believe culture's important. I think it trumps everything else. And how does this dynamic play into the culture of the organization?
So I think, first of all, it plays in a lot, right? And so what do you do if the culture doesn't support? So I talk a lot about like trickle down intimidation. And I have a post coming out tomorrow where I actually talk about this, where you've got somebody who's acting in a certain way, maybe micromanaging. Well, it's really going to create micromanagement at the next level, because that person is now going to be desperate to have all the information they need, and then that creates it at the next level. So that could be happening in your organization. So I guess the question I would say is it possible to have great boss-subordinate relationships in a culture that maybe is a negative force against that? And I would argue absolutely. You can create cultural oasis within your team. And that happens in a number of ways. One is, and unfortunately I think that you need to do some buffering. If your boss is acting in a way that's creating stress and intimidation, then you have two choices. You can pass it down, you can react, you can create all these fire drills, or you can just say, I'm going to stop it here, stop the madness here, and I'm going to lead the way that I believe I need to lead. And I've had points in my career that I've had to do that. And but when you do that, your team knows. And then they will run through brick walls, because they know because they're not naive. They see what's happening around. And the other thing is it will attract A players to your team, because people want to work in that environment. So I would say do the best you can to create the culture within whatever level of sphere of influence you may have within the organization. And don't throw up your hands and say, this is just the way it's always been, this is the way it's going to be, and I'm going to play into that. Because you won't, that will create internal angst for you, and if you're a leader who believes in leading in a different way, you won't feel healthy in that environment.
Yeah, I love that example about oasis. That could be powerful, just to build strength from within that small tribe, so to speak.
Yeah.
I love it.
And the tribe will grow. You will find the tribe will grow.
They do that. Thanks, Karen.
Karen, while we're kind of talking about some positive things we can do as leaders, can you talk a little bit about how important it is for a leader to be a mentor to those underneath them?
Yes, that's one of my favorite topics, actually, Liz, because I really believe, early in my career when I was in HR and I led all these mentoring programs, we developed all this mentoring training. They had what is a mentor and what is not a mentor. And in that curriculum, it says your boss cannot be a mentor. And I was like 20-something, and I was like, okay, your boss cannot be a mentor. Everybody fill in the blank, right? And I have, over my career, have realized that that is just nonsense, to me, at least from my perspective, that your boss you need other mentors other than your boss. Totally believe that. But some of the people who have turned out to be the very best bosses in my career, best mentors in my career, have been my bosses. Not only while they were my boss, but then afterwards. One of my bosses, it's 20 years later, she's retired, I still call her for advice, and that's wonderful, right? So I really would always say err on the side of developing the deepest relationship with the human beings on your team that you possibly can. And that really means looking for the big things, right? What are their hopes and dreams? What do they really want to accomplish? What else matters to them more than this job? As ludicrous as that may sound, there is something else. And you need to understand what those attractions and pulls are, so that you can help play in. What are the skills that they're bringing to the table that they're feeling like are not getting utilized? How can you pull those and leverage those in? And when you can, and what is their long-term career goal and path? and how can you help them get there? And when you are serving your team at that level, there is nothing more inspiring for them to execute on a daily basis, because they know you have their best interest in mind. They know that you're not about just your career, you're about everybody's career. And you know, some of the things that I feel most proud about are the people that have been promoted over the years that worked with me, and now are our peers, you know, at the same level. And I think that really makes a big, big difference when you can pull your own team. Sure, I've mentored a lot of people outside of my team, but the biggest successes are people that I have mentored with a little m, who were direct reports.
I completely agree. Thank you.
Karin, share with us, you have an exercise at the end of the book. It's called REAL, the abbreviation REAL, boss relationship. Share with us that lovely exercise, because I think it's very helpful to that relationship.
Well, yeah, so thank you. So my real model is results, energy, authenticity, and learning. And so what I really think about is, what can a boss relationship be at its very best? And so results, even if your relationship with your boss is extremely snuggly, right? You get along fine, it feels great, you're working on your long-term career goals. If you're not executing at your A game, if he or she's not pushing you to be the best you can be, if you don't feel like you're on fire and you've just jumped out of an airplane and accomplishing things you've never accomplished before, I'd say there's work to be done in the relationship. Because a really great boss-subordinate relationship translates to exceptional results. Authenticity is, do you feel like you can show up as you? Can you really be you in that relationship? And can they really be you?
Right.
Right? And so all of these go both ways. So energy, how do you feel when that person is approaching you? Do you want to duck and say, does it suck your energy away? And you're like, oh no. Or do you say, oh, here they come, they're going to help, this is going to be great? Or how do they feel when you show up? Do you suck out their life force, or do you light them up? And then learning, are you supporting each other's career goals? Are you working through mistakes productively together? And so all of those things. So it's really I position that model as a very reciprocal relationship under those 4 tenets.
Those are great tools. I mean, when I read this, I said this is a great thing, because you can, and one of the things about that I took is that hope people will take it. It's an imperfect thing, that don't expect perfection on this exercise. It's something that people can grow into and work on themselves. So I thought it was very neat.
Good, thank you.
Sure. Okay, I think we're concluding part 2. So, Karin, thank you so much for joining us today. We've had a lovely discussion. We can talk to you for hours, because we're hungry for answers on those relationships with our boss. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I so appreciate it. And thank you all for taking the time to ask such great questions. Really appreciate it.
You bet, Karen. Looking forward to jumping into the book.
Okay.
All right, and we're done here with Lead with Giants TV. You can find us on Twitter and leadwithgiants.com, as well as LinkedIn, and we're on Facebook. So please join us in our community. We're ever growing. Dan's goal is 10,000 uplifting leaders. So have a great evening, everybody.